So it's time for me to start planting out my winter squash. Maybe not for everybody, but I've looked at the long range weather forecast and it's looking pretty good. 12 degrees centigrade at night, moderate temperatures during the day, quite a lot of rain. I think the squash are really going to like it. Going to get really nicely established before the sun returns again. As always, I'm growing mine vertically and planting through these tomato halos, which just sink down there through this wood chip mulch. So I've cleaned out the planting holes. No slugs and snails this year. And I'm putting about 6 handfuls probably of this Marshall's Organic Extra, concentrated farmyard manure product in the hole. And then once I've done that, it takes a while. Right, I'm just forking that in really with the existing soil. So that's going to create a really rich growing medium. But given it's an organic product and it's nice and slow release, it makes sense. And this works obviously much better than an unconcentrated product, which there isn't much space for. So kind of all the nutrition's got to get into this little planting hole. There is some nutrition that comes from the rotting wood chip, but it's not enough on its own. So I just sink a plant pot in. I always prefer to do it this way because it just makes it easier to do all the prep without the plant involved. And obviously then I can just ease that plant pot out and pop the squash in when I'm ready. And I'll just sort of backfill around the edge there with a little bit more of the manure. Pop my halo back on and then give that a really good water. And then I'll leave that for about an hour while I get on with the others. And by then, hopefully all that water will have drained into that planting hole. It'll be nice and moist. And I can get on with the planting. So I've got 4 different areas for growing my squash. This is my favourite. This was an old pallet fence down here at one time, a few years ago, which had all rotten. So I took it out and put this frame in here. And the squash grow up it. So the idea is that I put canes in, the squash go up the canes and then along these horizontal battens, and then I use the string, there's one there from last year, to tie around the necks of the squash and just hold them so that these battens basically take the weight of the actual fruits, because they're pretty heavy Crown Prince fruits. I've never had one drop off, never had anything damaged in the wind particularly, maybe a few leaves and things like that, but nothing particularly difficult to deal with. It is a bit of a pain constantly having to tie in the growth onto the battens because they don't hold themselves, you have to tie them, and they grow pretty fast. So you're doing that sort of every 2 or 3 days. But the reason that I like this bed is because, well, it's otherwise wasted space, so it creates a big growing area out of nothing. It's really easy to manage because it's really thick mulch, especially this year. There's a good 8 inches of mulch along a lot of this. It's underneath these beds, so as nutrients kind of leach down into the lower soil, subsoil, it's accessible to the squash plants. And obviously the roots are going deep underneath this wood chip, underneath this path, and underneath this raised bed. And so, there's no chance really that they're going to run out of water. So there's not much watering needed. I do occasionally give them a liquid feed, but other than that, I've done the same thing that I did on the others, just a few double handfuls of concentrated farmyard manure, and we're ready to start planting. So these are the plants, quite variable growth rates actually. Some are like quite small and some are, substantially bigger. Basically same compost, same pots, same potting on time, different seeds from different suppliers. I wish I'd kept track of which seeds I'd used for which batch, but anyway, they're looking quite nice. I like to put them out small. I really don't like putting things like squash or any of the cucurbits really out as big plants. I think they just do so much better when they're started off nice and small like this. And I'm hoping for, you know, a reasonable root ball. I might just take one out now just to see, and hope it doesn't all collapse on me. No, that's all right. It's not too root bound, and it should get off nicely, I think. So this is by far my worst frame, and yeah, I get about half the harvest off this one because it's very nutrient poor. You know, this is a path that used to have grass down it for many years before I got the plot, and yeah, it's just landscape fabric now, so there's no real nutrients underneath here. There is nutrients underneath there obviously, but also I'm just not burying them as deeply or anything like that. You know, it's just not as good, but it's okay. I get probably one big fruit per plant off these, whereas I like to get 2 off the others. And it's quite nice as well because I'm planting them out and the halos are basically covering them, so they're really sheltered from the wind, which is the key kind of issue. Right now it's going to be warm enough for them, but you know, they still won't appreciate a blowing gale. And one of the other things I can do, because they're small like this, is I can just cover them over if I need to for a week or so, but I generally don't. But you know, it's always nice to have that option. And they'll be out of these, they'll be up here in a week or so's time. You know, they really do get going once they're planted out, especially with all that nutrient that I've given them. So this is a much nicer bed. This wood chip's been rotting down for 9 years, so it's pretty good now, deep down. And this is quite a nice bed as well, and they get a lot of shelter here as well when they're young, because they're obviously sheltered here by this coal frame and sheltered here by this low tunnel, so they really do get a kind of pretty good pampered start to life. I actually sowed these 22nd of April, and today actually is the 23rd, so basically they're a month old, and yeah, very happy with them. Don't want these halos to blow away in the wind. And this bed always does well, so I'm hoping for 2 fruits at least per plant. To be honest, 2 fruits is fine, you know, forget that number. We're putting in, I think, 13 plants, something like that in total. And so if we get kind of 1.5 fruits per plant on average, then we will be in squash abundance. In fact, we've still got quite a few left over, and we've got loads of courgettes at the moment. In fact, we're harvesting a lot of stuff, so you know, we're not getting through the squash particularly fast. I think we've got 3 or 4 left over, so yeah, we're not short of food at the moment, that's for sure. And if I do decide that they need a feed, I'll just give them liquid tomato food. Oh, and it's worth noting that what I do is I just drop maybe 3 or 4 slug pellets into the hole, so just on the surface there, just to protect them from slugs when they're young plants. They are quite susceptible to slug damage at this stage, so yeah, it's worth just that little bit of extra effort. And then this is always my most productive plant, because it's right next to the compost bin. I know quite a lot of people like to grow plants in their compost bins, but I am always using my compost bin, so I can't really just leave it for as a growing space. But this is a good second best. You know, all those nutrients over the years have all washed down into this soil here, so yeah, these plants do really well. And also it's another really shady little spot, so this bed here shelters it from easterlies, and all of this compost bins and all that here shelter it from northerlies. So yeah, we don't normally get much wind from the south, but if we do, it's generally not an issue because it's nice and warm. And I am gradually reducing the number of squash plants and trying to increase the yield per plant, because this bed, as I say, it's kind of one of my favourite beds, and I'm trying to plant it with trees gradually along here. So currently I've got a pear tree and an apple tree, and then gradually I'm sort of stepping along, fan training them to this structure here. So hopefully all of this bed, all of this fence rather, will eventually be perennial trees. And what other sort of trees are there? And then these beds will sort of be perennial planting as well. So yeah, I'm hoping gradually to move in that direction over the years. And then finally, I just dribble a little bit of water in the hole just to help settle the soil around them rather. So I just popped back a week later to check on these crown prints after the really bad storms, really high winds, loads of rain and all that sort of thing. And they're looking really lovely. Put on some decent growth, no real damage from the slugs. The odd leaf broke off, but yeah, just really comfortable with these, really well established. So if you want more and you want to see the squash actually growing and harvested and all that sort of thing, then take a look in the description down below, and I'll put a link to my squash growing guide, as long as all the other growing guides and things in my ebook and my gardening newsletter and all that sort of stuff. So it's always worth keeping a few spares, and so 3 should be plenty. Although this system that I use is very refined over many years, I still do get the occasional loss. You know, it's kind of inevitable, something goes wrong. Often slugs and snails, but I've taken a precaution against that, but nothing is perfect. So with that, I'm done. My name's Steve, and I'll see you soon.